Thank you for joining us today. My name is Bill Baker with Firestorm, and we're delighted that you're able to join us for this Tennessee Association of Independent Schools webinar. This is part of the Crisis Coach webinar series. In fact, it is the 11th in the 2016 series. Today we're going to be discussing monitoring of social media. We'd also like you to become our friend. On Facebook, we're known as Firestorm Solutions. On Twitter, you can follow us at Firestorm Soul. There is a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communications, crisis public relations, and consequence management. We'd like to remind you the presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion, and this work product should be discussed and read in conjunction with advice from your organization's personal counsel. In addition, this information should not be interpreted as legal advice or legal opinion. The webinar series today is underwritten by the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools, and we're delighted to have our good friend Rich Martin with us. Rich, over to you, please.
Just for the website reconstruction, we need to come looking at the webinar right now.
Hello,
Hi,
Rich. Yeah.
Are you?
Yes, I'm back. I got cut off for a second. So welcome to this webinar, 11th in the series, as you heard. I do want to say a couple things about upcoming TAIS events. Of course, we had our biennial conference last weekend in Chattanooga. It was a great success, a great event. I do want to mention that the upcoming scheduled global education workshop that was originally scheduled for the 15th of November at Franklin Road Academy is canceled for that date, but we're hoping to reschedule it for early December. And then I also want to point you toward next semester. We've got some great events coming up, workshops with Apple on transforming education with Apple at St. Paul Christian Academy in Nashville on the 19th. That's a half-day workshop. And then a couple events in Memphis, for those of you in West Tennessee, January 25th, curriculum unit design using the Understanding by Design model, presented by Kim Marshall, a great presenter, very knowledgeable. That'll be held in Memphis at Grace St. Luke's on the 25th of January. And then the 14th of February, one of our kickoff speakers on Monday, Tom Herr, who was talking about grit and the formative 5 non-cognitive skills we need to be teaching in our schools. We'll be doing a day-long workshop on leading from the middle for administrators that are just starting off as division heads and other leaders in the mid-ranks of our schools. And that'll be held at MUS. And then final side, on the 23rd of February, we're back in Nashville. We'll be doing a behavioral risk and threat assessment workshop, again, full day, and that's the fine folks that are bringing you this webinar. So we look forward to working with Final Side on that and on other events, and look forward to a great webinar today. Back to you, Bill and Karen.
Thank you, Rich. Our presenter today is Karen Masullo. She's the Chief Intelligence Officer at Firestorm and the Executive Vice President. Karen has extensive experience with social media monitoring and social media tools. She's also done extensive training in social media and other things. Karen, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bill, and thank you, Rich. It sounds like you have some wonderful upcoming events, including Firestorm's Behavioral Risk Threat Assessment Workshop. And this session is a great precursor to that because what we're talking about, the evolution of monitoring and predictive intelligence, runs all through the Behavioral Risk Threat Assessment Program. So I'm going to be referencing that quite a bit today as well. I also love your state, one of my favorites, so I'm very happy to speaking with you today in this, the 11th session of the year. We look forward to continuing these value-add sessions for the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools into 2017 and beyond. At any time, you can visit our website at firestorm.com, and our resources are located under the Resources tab. You can just click that menu item, and you can access infographics. You can access past webinars that will point you into our YouTube channel, or briefs and white papers of our sessions. You can also click into the education link on the right-hand side, and that will take you into resources for educators, for behavioral risk threat assessment, school violence prevention, and other issues and services related directly to your schools. Now, let's start off our session today with one simple question. What keeps you up at night? What threats are worrying you right now today? For those of you that are joining with other teammates, maybe you're in a conference room having a pizza for breakfast, I guess, donuts? What threats are worrying you today, right now? And our threats don't necessarily have to only be around violence, right? We have many other threats that can occur. We have drugs, we have cutting and self-harm behaviors. There are a lot of new threats emerging, especially today, with the types of applications that allow for live broadcasting, Facebook Live, YouNow. We've seen some really dangerous activities with kids challenging other kids to do certain things live broadcast on camera. So we have more than just workplace, school violence issues. But we did ask 484 of you during one of our sessions, are you concerned about violence in your schools? There's a tiny little bit of people, 0.21%, that are in disaster denial and said, nope, never going to happen. We want to get those people training as soon as possible, by the way. And there's another very small percentage, almost 8% actually, which is too high for us, that say they're not too concerned about it. It's probably not going to happen. The rest of you, however, more than 90% are either somewhat or very concerned about violence in your school. And that's why I'm thrilled to hear that you're going to be doing a behavioral threat assessment workshop. It's going to be terrific. Jim Satterfield is outstanding in this area. And for those of you who've been listening to him for the past 2 years on these webinars, I think you know the passion that he brings to the table, because one of the things that Jim will tell you over and over again is that almost every disaster or incident of violence or act of terrorism was preceded by some type of a warning signal. And instead of just looking at these after the fact, we try to understand what these behaviors or post-event situations are and work those into the predict phase of Predict, Plan, Perform. So they're not after-event analysis any longer, but pre-event. You know, after we see an act of violence in a school, we quite often see these same types of comments emerge. I knew it was going to happen. There was something not right about him. I reported it, but nobody did anything. I don't understand. He was such a nice guy. Man, you should have seen the things that he posted. They were really frightening. Well, what we'd like to do is see if we can just stop one act of violence, a death, or a self-harm situation through understanding what's going on through that behavioral risk threat assessment. And as we mentioned, walking all through that is the understanding of social and traditional media and predictive intelligence. So let's take our hypothetical student, we're going to call him Fred, and suddenly we observe that Fred's grades drop dramatically. He's having increasing arguments with teachers, coaches, other students. A fellow student reported that he got upset over something really small and was heard to say, "You guys are going to be sorry." His absenteeism rate has increased abruptly, and friends hear him talking crazy, but they really don't want to get involved, and they really don't have anybody or know where they can go to tell without being found out. Last, his posts are increasingly becoming threatening. Those posts include social media, YouTube videos, Instagram, WhatsApp, Snapchat, Twitter, and others. Now, when we see these different warning signals, who's in charge, who's responding, and who's responsible? One of the first things that we do when we create a predictive intelligence and social media monitoring program for your individual school or for a group of schools is we sit down and we say, what is the communication escalation workflow? If we see a risk, do you want to know every single post that comes through? Could be 30,000 a month. You need to be prepared. Could be 30,000 in a week. Or do you only want us to escalate those things that we have established are a credible threat? If so, who do they go to? Who do the copies go to? And where is your central repository? So we can assure that only one person is not the only one with the information, but rather that we have a team, a behavioral threat team, and everyone has access to the information, and we have predetermined how we're going to escalate that risk. Who can see it? Who is the last person to know? Is it the most important person? And do you have disparate systems? So one of the challenges that we have in an organization is, let's say something is observed by a security officer, a resource officer on your school grounds, and that resource officer enters that observation into a physical notes, old school, or maybe there's an electronic app that you have, a technology system where that data is entered. If an educator or coach during a practice at a football game sees behavior of concern, where does that data get entered? Same place? Or are they in two completely separate places, and ne'er the twain shall meet? And is all key information known around this situation and entered along with it? What we're hoping to help you do is get these different pieces of disparate information. Social media posts over here with a threat, an activity over here at a football field, and something over here at an after-school activity, and start connecting the dots. And by connecting the dots, we can hopefully keep a weapon or a behavior that can result in harm, self-harm, or harm to others out of your school and off of your campus. We're going to do this in 4 key preventative steps. So first, we're going to assess risk. For everyone on this call, sometimes we forget, as a benefit to the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools, we have created an opportunity for any of you who'd like. Just go ahead and email us at webinars@firestorm.com. And we're going to offer you what Jim Satterfield says is our best price, which is free, a 1-hour self-guided assessment. We're going to work with you on the phone. It's about a 1-hour conversation, and we're going to talk at a really high level about what we see as some vulnerabilities and assessments that may be occurring for you right now. Because if you understand the nature of the risk, this allows you to go ahead and start taking appropriate steps in your strategies to mitigate and manage potential violent situations. So the first thing we do is we assess your risk. Now, what we want to look at are the changing face of risk to schools. You know, sadly, schools have always had bomb threats and other threats. But we're starting to see, and we see these in cluster trends that happen. In the top left, we see All my life I've been bullied by these same kids. Well, tomorrow that all ends. Maryvale is going to look ugly tomorrow with an emoji of a gun. Then he says, bye-bye, Maryvale, with the emoji of a gun and a knife. And later he says, I'm sick and tired of teachers. I'm just going to kill every single one of them. It's over for Maryvale. Now, if you'll look down at this Facebook post, Facebook now has some, instead of just liking a post with the thumbs up, you can also love it. You can be surprised by it. So they have these different emojis that you can react to it. And if you look at this one, you'll notice there are a lot of people that had the laughing and smiley icon. So they didn't report this to somebody. They didn't go tell their parent, oh my God, look at this threat. No, they laughed and probably shared it with their other friends. This other one, ISIS attacks, it was an anonymous account, said getting ready to bomb Tennessee schools, Tipton County, on Thursday, 11/19, get ready for war. That was from last year. You're aware of that. I mean, that's a pretty frightening thing to see if you're a parent. But if you're the head of school, the last thing you want is to be alerted or notified of a threat against your school from a parent who saw it on their kid's phone. You want to be getting that data yourself in real time or in as real time as possible, and that's what we're going to help you do. And we do that through trend monitoring. We try to understand what's going on out in the environment, how it affects you, how it affects your very specific geographic region of the country, your schools, if it's a specific subject that may be one group of schools may be more prone or vulnerable to than another. And we establish a process for monitoring those inside and outside of your school. Remember, it's not just what happens on your campus, but what happens in the geographic area around it. So if there's civil unrest boiling up in your community, if there is, you know, I'm very sad to say I live in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, in Charleston, South Carolina, and we never imagined that we would have a devastating church shooting in our community that then affected so many schools and students as a result. There was, and it was an incredible year of heightened alarm, alerts, and activity. But we need to understand that. We need to have those trends in place. We need to bring our schools together through an association such as TAIS and help you develop a plan in order to respond appropriately to those trended threats. Dr. Peter Langman has a website. If you, I meant to put the URL here and I didn't. If you would like that URL, please email me to my attention at webinars@firestorm.com. He just recently updated on October 31st his 50-year review of multi-victim school shootings in the United States. It's pivotal work. It's very important work to understand, and I'll be happy to share that with you if you don't already have that website bookmarked. So he's a great resource for that. And I don't think there's anybody on this call today that is not absolutely sick of clowns. I don't know where the trend came from, where the hoaxes started, but every single state, and not just in the United States, but in the UK and other countries, is dealing with these creepy clown hoaxes. And the police and authorities are taking these hoaxes very, very seriously. These aren't jokes. They're disruptive, and they're happening not just on elementary schools or high school campuses, but on college campuses as well. We do regular monitoring for a very large school system with multiple schools, and every time we identified a fake profile cropping up on a clown account on Twitter, we'd report it, we'd get it reported. Twitter was very responsive about shutting it down, but there'd be another one, so we really had to be diligent about it. until for them it started to fade away. But we know about it, we're talking about it, and we feel your pain about it as well. The next thing we want to do after we assess and understand the trends is to make sure we know who's really in your building. You know, there are a couple of different ways that Firestorm becomes engaged with a school or a school system or school organizations, and that is the first way, which is somewhat reactive, in that a situation has occurred that is untoward. So there is an allegation of inappropriate conduct with a student by an employee or a teacher. And we immediately begin doing two types of monitoring. We monitor traditional media, RSS feeds, blogs, etc., for commentary, for parent reaction and student reaction. And please understand this is nothing covert. We're just aggregating open source or data that's comments that are already out there on the open web. But we also do a deeper dive into whomever the accused may be so that we can understand the context of the allegations and the charges. And we sadly are not surprised to find many times that this person has moved from camp to school to camp to any place that they had access to children, and we're just sort of moved along out of other people's systems and into, sadly, yours, because people don't want to report these things. They want to just move them along and get them out of their facility or their organization. So you've really got to be diligent in this pre-employment screening that you do, but then also work into your wording of your contracts that you can do spot screening at any time that you want to, in order to assure the safety of your students, teachers, and others in your building and your community. You know, if at any time you want to go right now, well, don't go right now, listen to me, but you can go to Google or Bing or any other search engine and just type in teacher accused or teacher arrested and just narrow it down to the last week or the last 30 days, and you'll get page after page after page after page. We know it's an issue. We know it's a problem. So we've learned to understand the trends, how it works, and how to help you. And we do that through the aggregation of open source social media predictive intelligence. We're looking at millions of bits of data. We're excluding bits of data that have nothing to do with your schools or your region, even though you may have the same name as 20 other schools. We make sure to couple it in a way that we're targeting yours specifically. We do both keyword, key phrase searching through one application, along with very specific geo-monitoring through other applications. And we help you, hopefully, identify problems before they become problems. I want to read you Robert Butler Jr.'s final message. This was from 2011, and sadly, an assistant principal and principal were shot when he returned to the school grounds, and one of them died. And the shooter said, "Everybody that used to know me, I'm sorry, but Omaha changed me and effed me up. And the school I attend is even worse. You're going to hear about the evil expletive I did, but that expletive school drove me to this. I want you guys to remember me for who I was before this. I know I greatly affected the lives of the family's room, but I'm sorry." That was on a social media website. We could have found that. And today, we do our very best so that we can. September of 2016, this was a threat that was received on social media targeting schools in North Carolina. Central Heat in the gym Friday, get into the spirit with my 765 going through your skulls. And a picture that was really, really frightening. Now that account has since been suspended. And I want you to know that the kids started saying, oh, you know, it's just because we had a rivalry game with Hickory Ridge. We think that it's just, you know, they're trying to scare us in a hoax. There are no jokes. There are no hoaxes. We take everything absolutely seriously. And the charges for perpetrating a hoax or a joke are extremely serious. So we really need to teach the kids, too. There is no joking. There is no line you can cross with regard to this type of activity. Now, I had mentioned we can put a fence, a geofence up, and look at any messages that come out from your campus where somebody has geolocation systems turned on. So not only are we going to see every single mention on your campus when people are just tweeting and using words maybe that have to do with your school or have to do with, you know, buildings, maybe you have a river that runs by your school that they may be using. So we try to get geospecific keywords in there when we don't have, we know not everyone is going to have geolocation services turned on. But we also capture those with geolocation services turned on. But I want to talk to you about something called geospoofing. What you're seeing here is the view I might see if I'm working with your account. In the middle of all of that is a school building. Off to the right, you can see there's a baseball diamond. A little bit further to the right, you can see that there's a football field, and I've covered the name of the school that we work with to keep safe. But I asked it, I said, just show me all Instagram and Twitter. And this school has blocked Yik Yak from its campus, but Yik Yak still appears. It still gets through that geofence. And the way Yik Yak still gets through that geofence is through something we're going to look at right now called geospoofing. But I just wanted you to very quickly see, this is sort of a broad view of what I see, and then I can click into any of these messages, see specific messages, and I can look at it visually like this, or I can look at it in a threaded message manner. But what is this geospoofing? Well, this guy, Hunter Park, put an entire university campus into extreme threat mode because they did something through an application they found that there are hundreds of these applications on the App Store and Android Store that spoofs or fakes your GPS geolocation. So he wrote on another social site, on Reddit or 4chan, I can't remember, my roommates and I spoofed our GPS and are trolling your Yik Yak. He posted this to the students at the school. It's fantastic. Well, not everybody knew that, and people were really frightened because at the time and currently, there's a great deal of civil unrest going on across the country on many different campuses. And what this vile, despicable post was that used one of these fake GPS spoofers was, I'm going to stand my ground tomorrow and shoot every black person I see. That's pretty frightening. And it put the entire campus and student body on high alert. So what he did was he pretended he was on that campus when actually he was 100 miles away. And the reason I bring this up, it's important. My team understands this, and we understand how to do a little bit of research that complements what we find, understand who the person who's posting sphere of influence is, and to then determine a most likely geographic location, so that even if it shows that they're in Chattanooga, they may actually be in Nashville. And because of their sphere of influence, we can identify the possibility of that happening. Because if you can spoof to appear at a location, you can spoof to appear elsewhere when you actually are at a location, and that's important. If I say I didn't make that threat, I was in the United Kingdom at the time, you can see on my phone, see here I was at the airport. You may actually have spoofed that when you actually did make a threat from on-site within the campus that you were going to put a bomb in the boys' bathroom. We know that these types of threats and swatting, digital swatting, are becoming more and more popular with some of those self-broadcast tools that I had mentioned earlier. If I can get the SWAT team to descend on a school over a false threat and then film it and post it and get a whole bunch of people to like it, I'm suddenly popular for a moment. And it's a really dangerous trend that's going on in schools all across the country. Now, I'd like those of you on the call to think of the following comment that a parent made to a post related to a threat that was received by a school. When are we going to stop taking these threats seriously? Do we really think the bad guys are going to tell the authorities their plan before it happens? Oh, it's probably just some kid who wanted to get out of his Friday afternoon test. Do we really think the bad guys are going to tell the authorities their plan before it happens? Yes, we do, because they do. UC Merced student, tossed from study group, had a manifesto on violent revenge. He had put that on Tumblr. The Oregon shooter's manifesto, I was hated since birth. He posted parts of it on Facebook. Elliot Rodger posted video after video after video on YouTube before he visited mayhem on unsuspecting sorority girls on the campus in California. I watched those videos. They were out there. His parents tried to get him help, and they just weren't able to. But at least there was an effort to identify there was a problem. Now, how do we find threats? Well, this is how my team finds threats, and we'd like to be able to help you find them as well. My team works under what we call an ACT approach. The first is awareness. We need to know what's going on. We put it into context so it makes sense, and then we double check what we're saying through the tools we have at our disposal, and certainly the training that we receive and that we extend to you. So the first thing is awareness. You know, we're going to search emojis, we're going to search certain key phrases, we're going to search gun to school, why I'm bringing my gun to school. We're very proud of ourselves. A couple of years ago, we kept a gun out of school, and we had about 15 minutes before the school day started, and we had an anonymous account where somebody said, I'm going to bring my gun to school today. And we were able to figure out within a 2-mile radius where we figured that person lived, what school they went to based on their location. We were able to contact the head of school, and about an hour later, the person actually posted that they'd not only taken the gun, and she was out of school at the time, but that they'd also found her clip in her locker. So people really do say these things on social media, and I'm glad they do, because then we can find out where the threats are. But we're searching on all of that kind of information all the time, and I want to show you this one in particular. There's an ongoing conversation on Facebook. Now, this conversation should not be ongoing. After the first threat, it needed to stop, it needed to be escalated, it needed to be moved forward. And I want to point something out to you. The tools that we use are appropriate for both threat prediction, threat assessment, and also for marketing. We recognize that you conduct marketing through social media, and your social media presence is very important. But you cannot charge your marketers with threat response. Jim Satterfield recently had an issue with a person who had threatened a company they worked for after school. And while we were researching that threat, we also found that the employer had a problem with a manager in the facility trading drugs for better hours, better shifts. So that was another problem we found. But one of the core issues was that the marketing team, we had not been engaged by the company, so the marketing team were the ones who saw the threat. And the marketing team did what marketers do. Marketers are trained to engage. They're trained to say, hey, glad you love our product, or sorry, you don't like our product, can you tell us how we can do better? So they engaged the person who was making the threat, which enraged the person who was making the threat and escalated the situation in a negative way. So I bring that up because we're trained to say, we have a threat, we have established escalation protocol, we're going to alert you and move through that protocol that we have set up in your original plan and program. And this student said, fine, I'm going to bring a gun to school Friday and kill all the girls. I'm serious. I'm going to do it 9:30 Friday during the first hour. I have a 12-gauge shotgun, a 9mm pistol, and I'm going to bring it and start killing everyone. And what he was doing was he was trying to get a group of cheerleaders to send him inappropriate images, and he was telling them that if they refused to send him the images, he was going to retaliate by going to the school and creating an act of violence. Pretty scary for these young girls. Once we've seen a threat issued, we then need to understand the context of the threat. And so the next steps that we take are to identify, is it a quote from a song? Is it a meme, M-E-M-E, that's wandering around the internet and we need to be aware of? In this case, this person said, I'm taking my gun to school. Yesterday they tried to jump me. Well, it is. These are the song lyrics from a song called School by an up-and-coming rapper. And it's important that we know when we see something, it's still challenging, it's still a threat, but we need to understand this is someone who's repeating lyrics to a song. 2 years ago, there was a band, well, there still is a band, although I think I don't mean to insult bands by using the word band, called Demure. And they published a song called, I don't know, Boyfriend's a Jerk, so he brings a gun to school. And it's about, they said it was meant to be facetious in a statement against violence in schools, but it was really a pro-violent song about someone who was really fed up and brought a gun to school and shot everybody. And the lyrics trended, they still trend 2 years later, they continue to trend. It went from like no mentions to over 2 million mentions in a 24-hour period when the song was released. And people still talk about it. It went very viral. So we had to inform those schools that we work with, hey, you're going to be seeing this. You're going to be hearing this. You're going to be hearing somebody walking down the hallway saying, I'm going to bring a gun to school. And we need to be able to put it into context of what's happening. That doesn't mean the language is appropriate. It just means we have to understand why we're seeing it. And then how we see it is important, and we do that through the tools that we use and the training that we conduct within your organization with your key people, or we do it all for you. And this is an example of a dashboard that I might see. I can see that I've had X number of mentions of a keyword phrase, and I can see where those mentions come from. I can filter them for a week, a day, an hour. I can see sentiment analysis. I can see conversation maps. So it gives me just a really quick visual on what's going on in my school, on my school grounds, or even in my neighborhood at any given time. And we have folks that are specially trained to work with you and communicate with you when we do indeed see a threat. Here's an example. Facebook post promotes heightened security. the students to stay home. The last thing we want to have happen is to have some rumor go rampant on Facebook and suddenly create fear in your school and have half your student body not show up one day because of posts on Facebook about racial tension, about rumors that somebody's bringing a gun to school. And there is a way that this information starts to evolve, and there has to be a response protocol plan that you have in place when it does happen. For every school on this call today, if tomorrow you saw a Facebook post or you knew there was a Facebook post that said somebody was going to bring a gun to school or planted a bomb in your school, do you have ready the message that you would send out to the student body, to parents? What about when the media called? What would you say and what would you do? If the answer to that is, gee, I'm not really sure, you need to contact us, talk to us for an hour, and let us just help you start getting clarity around what your next critical decisions will be in the case a crisis does evolve. And we can help you through the monitoring piece of it isolate specifically what geography something is evolving from, whether it's your campus, another campus, etc. Very quickly before we end today, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the workshop that you're going to be doing, some of the pieces we're going to look at. And one of those is, how do you determine the difference between threats and behaviors of concern? What's the real difference? Well, a threat is pretty straightforward. It's bullying, cyberbullying. Somebody walks up to somebody and punches them. That's a real threat. That's threatening behavior. There can be conditional threats. If I don't get what I want, I'm going to come back and set the lab on fire. Or they're veiled or indirect threats. Behaviors of concern aren't quite that clear. And we do see a great deal of this start to evolve through social media. We see an obsession with past shooters. There is still to this day the most distasteful Tumblr, and Tumblr, if you don't know it, is a popular blogging platform, but there is still a Tumblr dedicated to the Columbine shooters by shooters from another situation, from Canada. It's so upsetting to me that that's still up. But that's where we see it. And we see veiled or indirect threats. We see an obsession with other like instances. We see self-harm, substance abuse being talked about in social messages. And these angry or threatening statements appear on social media, and they are seen by someone. They're seen by friends, by peer groups, by parents, and they're either ignored, they're either written off to, it's teenage behavior, or it's a youthful behavior. And hopefully what really happens is they get escalated to someone who can actually do something about it. So the last thing I want to leave you with is, we have asked you in the past throughout this year of different instances of do you currently use external intelligence to identify potential threats? And these numbers, we need these numbers to change. We need those no's to turn into yeses, and we need those don't knows to turn into absolutely no. We need, when you have a teacher or anyone in your organization who sees a threat, not necessarily by a student, it could be by someone who has nothing to do with your school, it could be a vendor, it could be just anyone. If we see a threat out there, do we know exactly what to do with it? Do we have a team who watches this information? Do we have a 1-800 number, anonymous reporting, where I can say, I just saw something and I need this escalated to someone who can do something about it? If your answer is anything but yes, again, we need to talk to get you and your school better prepared so that you can go from a maturity rating as an organization of completely everything you do is in surprise. Everything that happens, everything you say is a surprise to yourself. Pardon me, from that to a reactive, preactive, and then eventually a strategic culture of preparedness. We want you to have a clear playbook for every major crisis that occurs so that we can keep you, your students, your parents, your teachers, your staff, and others within your organization, campus, and community safer. Remember, the greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance. Rather, it is the illusion of knowledge. That's going to end our session for today, and you can download the brief of this session probably in about 48 hours on our website after it's transcribed at firestorm.com/brief or under the Resources tab. I want to thank the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools and Rich Martin for being our host today and our underwriter. And as always, you can contact us at firestorm.com. If you'd like to email, you can email us at webinars@firestorm.com or call us toll-free 800-321-2219. Thank you again. Please keep your school safe and appreciate your listening. This will end our session for today, and have a great day.